not your butterfly. I'm not your picture bride. I am a samurai woman who holds up half the sky. I haven't bowed my head. I haven't bound my feet. I have endured the heat. I'm not afraid to leave. I am. I have crossed waters wide. I have climbed mountains high. I carried you inside my heart when I took a stride. I am your memory, stories of you and me, moment of breaking free, so you can be, you can be. Born every day, my spirit can't be gauged. I'm living to create. I am. Hey, 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 I am. Ooh, I am.
Good evening. Hi, everybody. I'm Stesha Brandon, the Literature and Humanities Program Manager at the Seattle Public Library. And as we begin tonight, I would like to acknowledge that we are on Indigenous land. These are the traditional unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Duwamish people. We honor their elders past and present and thank them for their stewardship of this land. Welcome to tonight's program with Nobuko Miyamoto to celebrate her new book, Not Your Butterfly, presented in partnership with Elliott Bay Book Company, Densho, Seattle JACL, and Great Leap. We're grateful to our author series sponsors, the Gary and Connie Kunis Foundation and the Seattle Times for generous support of library programs. Thank you as well to the Seattle Public Library Foundation. Private gifts to the foundation from thousands of donors help the library provide free programs and services that touch the lives of everyone in our community. I have a couple quick announcements before we get started. Our friends over at Elliott Bay Book Company have copies of Nobuko's book and signed book plates too, although I hear they're going fast, so you gotta get your order in. The store is open for limited browsing, curbside pickup, or delivery, and you can find books at their website, elliottbaybook.com, and we'll also put a link to that website in the chat as well to make it easy for you. I also wanted to let you know we have closed captioning available tonight. To access the closed captioning, you just click on the closed captioning icon at the bottom of your screen. And then also after tonight's conversation, we'll have time for questions from you. You can ask your question at any time by writing it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And finally, we'd love to hear from you. Toward the end of the program, we'll post a link to a survey in the chat, and we'd appreciate it if you took a few minutes after the event to share your thoughts with us. Now, I am delighted to welcome Linda Ando, a community art activist and organizer who was a driving force behind tonight's program. She really made it all happen. So hi, Linda.
Hi, Stacia. Thank you for that warm welcome. And I'd like to welcome you all to a very special evening with the legendary artist, activist, musician, dancer, community builder, and storyteller, my dear friend Nobuko Miyamoto, as she shares her memoir, Not Your Butterfly, my long song of relocation, race, love, and revolution. And this is a must-read for you all, and make sure to get your own copy to read all about Nobuko's life. And there's so much to say about Nobuko, it's hard to know where to begin. So on a personal level, I first met Nobuko in the early 1990s at Cal State University of Long Beach when I coordinated the Grain of Sand show on campus. And she blew my mind as a young artist and activist at that time. And it was the start of a long and deep friendship and sisterhood. Nob is deeply loved and respected by so many for paving the path and mentoring artists and communities to tell their own stories through dance, music, spoken words, and as activists standing up for social justice, speaking out against racial and political injustices through the power of art and community solidarity. Yuri Kochiyama and Grace Lee Boggs were influential mentors and strong Asian American women in Nobuko's life as well as mine and many others. In 1973, Yellow Pearl, Nobuko, Kresia Jima, and Charlie Chin produced what's known as the first Asian American album, A Grain of Sand, Music for the Struggles of Asians in America, featuring songs like Yellow Pearl, Rainbow Warriors, We Are the Children of Migrant Workers, Offsprings of the Concentration Camps, and Free the Land. These lyrics express the soul of the people during these tumultuous times of war, civil rights, racial and social unrest. I know there's people watching today that have the original vinyl copy of the LP, possibly with Nobuko's signature. And that is really cool. And so, a little bit more about Nobuko. She's the artistic director of Great Leap, a nonprofit community-based multicultural arts organization in Los Angeles, which is over 40 years strong and truly one of the treasures of our community arts and building community solidarity that crosses many borders. And I've had the pleasure to work closely with Nob and Great Leap over the years. Nobuko, she keeps rocking. She hasn't slowed down. She recently produced a double album, 120,000 Stories, by the Smithsonian Folkways, featuring 50 years of Nobuko's music. It's amazing. And this is something else you must check out and get your own copy. And then, if that wasn't enough, she published her memoir, Not Your Butterfly, in June of 2021. In documenting her amazing life, tonight she will share pieces of her long song of relocation, race, love, and revolution. So thank you, Nobuko. And before we get started, I'd like to introduce Deborah Wong. She's the editor of Not Your Butterfly and a highly respected ethnomusicologist, professor of music at University of Riverside. She specializes in the music of Asian America and Thailand. She's written 3 books, most recently Louder and Faster, Pain, Joy, and the Body, Politics in Asian American Taiko. Her research has focused on Asian American self-determination through music and musicians, often as a kind of radical or even revolutionary. Deborah will be the moderator of tonight's conversation with our 3 amazing panelists who will dialogue with Nobuko about her life and memoir. So take it away, Deborah, and enjoy.
Thank you, Linda. And hi, Nobuko. Oh my God, I have learned so much from you about self-determination and revolution and all those good things. So much, so much. Yes, and I do sit around all the time just holding your book in my arms, just like this, all the time, like a teddy bear. Yeah. We're going to have a good conversation tonight, aren't we?
Yes,
we're in the middle of your amazing remote book tour, you know, up and down the West Coast, you know, I mean, all over the country now at this point, right? But I think we can agree that this is a really special one, that the folks from the Seattle Public Library and the Elliott Bay Book Company and the amazing Linda Ondo have like outdone themselves in how they put this event together. So
actually, Seattle is really dear to my heart because this is the place that I started my singing career after my dance career, and I sang at the Colony Club in Seattle. So it's always had a dear place in my heart, and the people of Seattle especially.
That comes through loud and clear, and it will through this entire conversation. I just already know. And I'd like the audience, and first of all, hello to the audience. Thank you so many of you for coming tonight. We're quite bowled over by how many of you are here. We want to encourage you to drop questions and just off the cuff spontaneous responses into the Q&A and the chat as the event goes on. Please do. But I'd like you to lay eyes on our 3 amazing panelists that are going to be talking with Nobuko over the next hour or so. Very quickly, I'd like you to meet Vince Schleitweiler and Anita Yu Ali and Michelle Habel Payan. And I just wanted the audience to see your wonderfulness for a moment before you come back on for more sustained conversation. But I want the audience to know that these 3 folks all of whom I believe are in Seattle, and you certainly live and work there, are scholars, are activists, are organizers, are cultural workers, and they all connect to Nobuko in very special and different ways, in fact. So you're going to hear more from each of them. Yeah, Vince, yeah, that's the spirit. Yeah, you're going to hear from each of them as the hour goes on. So for now, I'd like to turn back to Nobuko and ask you to bring us into the book. Nobuko, could you read us a passage, please?
Okay, this is where it begins. I was born where I didn't belong. At 2, I became the enemy, a would-be spy, a threat to US internal security. Soon, I was removed with 120,000 others who looked like me to a place the grown-ups called camp. But it was no summer camp.
What a way to start the book. Yeah, yeah. You knew from early on you wanted to start the book that way, didn't you? If I'm remembering correctly.
Well, I was sort of inspired by actually Billie Holiday. I love the beginning of her book, and actually the book is a series of chapters based on lyrics or titles of songs, either that I've sung or written or just related to. So it is a long song, and especially for somebody who's mostly used to writing 3 verses and a chorus, to write a whole book was, I had to reduce it to that, 1 chapter at a time, like 1 song at a time. And that's how I sort of approached it, so I wouldn't be overwhelmed by the process. So I'm glad to share it with you all. Thank you.
It's an amazing read. I am so glad, so grateful that you wrote it. So glad that Grace Lee Boggs called upon you to write it, right? Maybe that will come up again in conversation. When you always say, you're not a writer, you're a singer, songwriter, dancer, there are many other things, and yet you've written an amazing book about amazing life. I urge the audience to check out this book. It's not only a good read, it's an inspiring read. And I'd like to bring on our first guest, Vince Schleitweiler, because in fact, he can pick up right where your book begins at a certain way, because Vince, oh my God, Vince, you are a scholar and an educator. You teach at the University of Washington, in ethnic studies and Asian American studies. Your research is so interesting because not only are you an expert in Japanese American, history and culture, but also Filipino and African American, sort of all the intersections between these different communities, right? I see that you write about what you call the lost Afro-Asian century, which is so evocative, and I'm also just like so impressed and grateful for your extensive public writing and your public history work. So welcome, Vince. And as I understand it, you got a couple of questions for Nobuko.
Thank you for that very generous introduction. And I wanted to reiterate everything that you said, Deborah, about how fantastic this book is. Really beautifully written and engaging, and as amazing as your own life is, Nobuko. I have taught some of your work in classes for a number of years, and I thought that I knew a good part of your story, but I felt like I didn't know the half of it. And I learned so much from reading this book. And what I wanted to tell you, and I think I told you briefly beforehand, is this book is going to change a lot of lives. And I think that on top of all the things that you've given us over the course of your career, I think this is a real treasure. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
But I wanted to begin where you began. You were talking about how you were incarcerated as a toddler, right? In a temporary concentration camp in the horse stalls at San Antonio Racetrack, which happened to be the same place where members of my family were incarcerated. And I was thinking about you and your experiences this last weekend when other former child incarcerees who were part of the Tudu for Solidarity movement were part of a protest at Fort Bliss in Texas. which is a site that formerly held Japanese Americans during World War II, and is currently a site that is holding immigrant children. It's a current site of detention of immigrant children. And thinking about the Tudor for Solidarity movement, which I know that you have participated in, always makes me think about how this story, which began so long ago, of Japanese American incarceration is not yet finished, right? Because the meaning of that story is still changing and it's still being created in struggle. In your book, you talk about how the pressure on Japanese Americans after World War II to be twice as good, right? To be overachievers, to defer to white norms, was really powerful and intense and something you had to work through. But you also talk about how your experiences helped you to understand the struggles of other groups. And so the first thing I want to ask you is, how has your understanding of your experiences of incarceration as a child, how has that changed over time? And did that inform your commitment to solidarity?
Well, of course, as you said, the first instinct of my parents and myself was to try to belong in this place that rejected us, that made us feel like the enemy when we were citizens. And so to prove our worth as a citizen, we put aside a lot of who we were. We gave up a lot of who we were. And I was trained in my early career in Western dance, ballet mainly, and other forms of dance, modern dance, etc. And it was through working in the show business and films and Broadway that I learned the limits of where I could still belong, even though I was trained in an elite manner to compete in the system. So that was an awakening for me. Yes, at 12 years old, I was told in order to be a dancer or make a living as a dancer, I had to be twice as good as everyone else. But then it was proven to be true. And but it wasn't until I came into the movement that it gave me a lens to look at the bigger picture of what camp really did to us, how it imprinted. First of all, we were always called a minority. All of us, people of color, were always stamped with this minority, this feeling that we were small, insignificant, and unable to burst out into the world that we lived in. So the movement taught me that Japanese Americans weren't the only ones that felt this way. And as actually, because my first entree into the movement was helping to make a film about the Black Panthers with Antonello Branca from Italy, and Masai Hewitt of the Black Panthers were talking about how Japanese Americans were put in camp and how Black Americans who were activists could also be put in those camps. So the awareness of of our experience was already in the minds of Black people. They were ahead of us. They saw our story in the context of this bigger. Then, of course, within the experience of Native Americans who were relocated and moved and removed, et cetera, repatriation of Mexican Americans, et cetera. So we grew up sort of not realizing that, because that was not in our history books. These stories were not included until we were politicized and we were taking in the view of people who were in the movement, fighting for liberation, fighting for justice, fighting for our stories to be told in universities, in schools.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And it's so powerful to think of how, to have your experience, right, recognized and sort of understood and validated, right, by other folks who are not Japanese American. I know sometimes we're surprised to hear that other people know our story. So that, you know, you talk about in the book too, what you just said, how your political awakening was shaped by the Black Panthers. And you also talk about how you were brought into the Asian American movement by Yuri Kochiyama, right? Whose own political awakening came by Malcolm X. So I've been thinking in the past year about how this new wave of Asian American consciousness and activism that we've seen, which clearly, you know, has clearly grown out of the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement in the wake of the killing of George Floyd and the uprising in Minneapolis. And I don't think it can be emphasized enough that this is not the first time that Asian American consciousness has grown out of solidarity with Black freedom struggles, right? As your story reminds us. And even the very idea of Asian Americans as a cohesive group with shared interests was not just inspired by Black movements, but was literally schooled in them, right? By people who were involved in those movements. But at the same time, as a mother of a Black child, you have become acutely aware of the anti-Blackness within Japanese American and Asian American communities. And so I wanted to know if you could say more about how solidarity with Black liberation shaped your sense of your own identity and position as an Asian American woman, and how your experience can help other Asian Americans recognize and confront anti-Black racism and work towards solidarity with Black liberation.
Yes, I don't think we can skip into solidarity without looking at the traditions and our own families, and looking at the fact that at least I was brought up by saying, don't play with the Kuro-chan kids. Kuro-chan meaning the Black kids. And we lived in a Black community. So we listened to our parents. You know, we didn't have any judgment about whether that was right or wrong at the time. But as you grow older and you're in school, I was in school with a mixture of Black, Japanese, and Mexican kids, as well as Jewish kids. And the awareness that we should be equal, but that was something we had to fight for. I felt actually inhibited from accepting a date from a Black boy who happened to be the son of Lena Horne that went to LA high school. And I didn't know how to say no, but I knew it was wrong somehow that I couldn't say yes. And I felt very guilty about this for many years afterwards. And so, you know when something doesn't feel right in your body. You know that the things, some of the things that your parents say, even though they want the best for you, is not correct, is not right. So for me to go to my mother when I was pregnant with Gamal, my son, whose father was part of the Black movement, it was very difficult for me to tell her I was going to have a Black child. And she literally fell apart for days, crying unconsolably. So, but I had to stand my ground and follow my heart. And I was actually helped by Reverend Mas Godani of Senshin Buddhist Temple, who asked why I went, and I said, what am I going to do? I want to be here. I want to make art within the Japanese community. Are they going to accept me as somebody who has a Black child? And he said, don't worry. After a while, you'll be just like everybody else. So just do what you think is right. Follow your heart. And indeed, by doing that, my mother actually came around, and she became one of my son's most strongest supporters. So it transformed my family by sticking my ground. It transformed the people around me. Even in the temple, there were people that wondered who this little Black kid was who was running around the temple. It transformed them also because he was part of their life. So sometimes we have to make a stand to change our parents, and change our community, to take that extra step to be who we are and to be who we believe.
Sorry. Nobuko, those sections of your book are like so powerful, because you don't step back from, the pain and the anger that was involved, but you bring us along the journey into a very different place of encounter. And Vince, your questions were like perfect. I knew they would be. Yeah, because your research is proceeding along exactly these very important questions. So thank you. We'll bring you back later at the end, Vince, for more discussion. Yeah, and I should say to the audience, I just love the things that I see popping up in the chat. One of you mentioned that there's a lot of power in this room. I would say right back at you. I'm seeing a lot of amazing names for those of you who have showed up. I'm feeling the strength that comes with being in the same room together, all of us, all 85 of us. Yeah. Yeah, right. Nobuko, before we bring on our next guest, I think we want to show a video, right? How about Free the Land? Could you walk us into the song and the video?
Okay. Vince already mentioned that, you all mentioned that Yuriko Giamo is a key character in my life who brought me into the movement and literally changed almost every part of me, introduced me to Gamau's father, my son's father, etc. And so this is a tribute to her and the Republic of New Africa. She was a citizen of the Republic of New Africa, which was an offshoot of Malcolm X's philosophy. It was a Black organization. They didn't call it an organization. I mean, they were citizens of this state of the Republic of New Africa, this vision that if America doesn't want us in their midst, give us 5 states and the South, and we will make that our nation. This is how big their vision was. Mm-hmm. And so Yuri was part of this. Of course, it was an extension of what many Black intellectuals and activists had thought about, including Malcolm X. So I'd like to share this video, which also, and the song, which Chris Ijima envisioned as a way of a tribute as Asians to the Republic of New Africa, and 2 brothers that are part of this, one of whom is a political prisoner and the godfather of my son, Matulu Shakur, and his partner, Atala Ayubi, Kamau's father, who is no longer here with us. So these warriors, it's also a tribute to them.
Wow, Nobuko, I feel like we just walked down the hallway and looked at your family photos, basically. Kind of sort of did, right? Yeah. And most of those photos are in your book. Yeah, not all of them.
Many of them, yes.
Many of them. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, it's a great video. Let's bring on our next guest. What do you think?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Let's bring on Anita Yu Ali. Anita, hi. Oh my gosh. I know you're not feeling totally well tonight, so thank you for joining us, for making it possible anyway. Yeah, I hope you're feeling better. I've been following your work since the late 1990s. I'm such a fan of yours. You are like impossible to categorize in really cool ways. I mean, first of all, you are like Cambodian American and Muslim and Khmer and, you know, a whole bunch of nested, you know, sort of diasporic identities, I think, that are really, you know, a powerful convergence in you. And the way in which you move between being a performance artist and a poet and a spoken word artist and a video artist and an installation artist, performer, and all of this, you know, solidly activist. It's just stunning, your work, you know. And I first became aware of you with the I Was Born with Two Tongues collective, and then sort of followed you into your work with the Mango tribe, you know, back in the day. And just like your long-term fascinations, your creative fascinations with, you know, diaspora, Buddhism, and, you know, Muslim presence post 9/11, all these things are just come together so richly in your work. And you and Nobuko have so many shared interests and hopes. I look forward to what you're going to talk about together. Welcome.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm greeting you from Puyallup land here and acknowledge the elders past, present, and future. Deborah, first of all, that was an outstanding intro. I love that you personalize it, and I need to take you everywhere I go so that you can do that for me. Nobuko, it is such an honor. A belated Eid Mubarak to you and your family, and to all the families out there that are celebrating our second holy holiday, Eid, which was just a couple days ago. So honored to be here. And Deborah sort of picked up on a lot of things. I Was Born with Two Tongues, which was a pivotal group in the late 1990s that spearheaded the spoken word scene for Asian Americans, could not have been possible without us digging through the archives and finding something called A Grain of Sand and listening to it on vinyl. I don't have my copy to show you, but on vinyl, and just unbelievably feeling like it wasn't only your rage, but it was a special kind of rage. It was a rage with love. It was this feel good energy, but it had this vitality. That's what we appreciated. And a lot of our words came from that energy we felt, which was such a generosity. Our letter to our unborn children with the words, because yellow is beautiful, because brown is beautiful, is a direct reference to one of the songs on your album. So I just want to give you the proper due and accolade, because we were looking so hard for mentors back then, because we were also aligning ourselves with Free Mumia, with the Autonomous Zone, with the Revolutionary Bookstore as Asian Americans, and we didn't see our people with us. So we felt really lonely, and the more we delved into Asian American history, we would find morsels of things like A Grain of Sand and your work, Yuri Kochiyama, Grace Lee Boggs. And by the way, name dropping, this book, y'all, you need to read this book, because Nobuko takes you through Gene Kelly, Martha Graham, Yoko Ono, John Lennon. There's a very interesting story about what Yoko and John did to them, kind of. Lena Horne and her son, what? Bobby Seale. Okay, so those are just a few names, but you have to read this, because this woman is living a legacy, but also she was intersectionality before it was coined intersectionality. That's the other thing that I walked away with this book. A huge parallel that I want to pivot on is I've always thought of art and artistry as creation, and that creation is ultimately the counter of destruction. And that I believe that artists have to create at the scale to which humanity has the capacity to destroy. And you say this in a different way. In your quotation on page 109, you say culture is a weapon in our struggle for liberation. And I would like you to speak from that vantage point of your journey as an artist and why culture is a weapon, because with it comes danger. And there is also a story in here about the COINTELPRO things that happened to you, very scary things.
So it's interesting because our intersection happened in Chicago in the 90s, but it was Chicago that really was a place, an intersection that which brought together Asian American activists from the East and West Coast in 1970 for a convention of the JACL. And in your town, which had just witnessed the convention in which thousands of people on television were beaten, and where Fred Hampton had just been murdered just a few months before we arrived there. This was the Chicago we came into in 1970, in the summer of 1970. And we were there to tell our elders, you must take a stand against the Vietnam War, because look what they did to us in Hiroshima. Look what they're doing to us in Vietnam. It's the same thing. So the day that we met our Asian brothers and sisters, it was like an amazing realization that we were a movement. We weren't just these isolated activists in these different towns. We were a movement. We were all over the United States. And here we went as a group. Some of us visited the Black Panthers, who had welcomed us, again, welcomed us as brothers and sisters. And we saw them continuing their struggle to feed breakfast for children, in spite of the fact that their office was bullet ridden. We went from their office and we bumped into a demonstration of Native Americans who were fighting for better housing for urban Indians. And they had a big teepee right in front of Wrigley's Field. You know, we're going like, whoa, this is amazing. And they brought us in and they made ceremony with us right there on the street in front of Wrigley Field. We sat in a circle past the pipe, and they told us the story of Warriors of the Rainbow. They said there would be 5,000 years of evil followed by 5,000 years of good, and that change would come when warriors, all the colors of the rainbow, would come together. So we felt we had this charge. Fred Hampton had been murdered here. We were walking in the streets. They were throwing bottles at us as we walked back to the church where we were sleeping on the floor. And that night, Chris brought out his guitar and started noodling around. And I didn't know he sang. I didn't know he played. And he didn't know I sang. And we just started writing a song together. And the next day, we performed it in front of the convention. And it was there that we realized that we had never had our own song. We had never had a song that sang us. So that was the beginning. That was just the beginning, because a young sister was murdered there in our group, in the hotel room, in the Palmer House. And we too have a sacrificial lamb like Fred Hampton. We too have to stand up and be brave like the Panthers. And we went back to New York. We wrote more songs. That's when we wrote We Are the Children. That's when we wrote Yellow Pearl. That's when we wrote Something About Me Today, etc. Yes, we were fired. We were fired up. And we were moving across the country then to tour as troubadours to different communities. Yes, so we did have that sense of our music was a weapon. Our music was a form of organizing people, our communities, to express ideas and stories and feelings that we had that had never been expressed before. And there was great power in that, and a great responsibility as well.
It's definitely great responsibility because there was another moment in the book where you were talking about, and really early on in the book, you talk about your rigorous training in ballet specifically and dance. And that was really beautiful. And I really want my 11-year-old to read this book because she's very into dance too. And I want her to read it. I want to ask you about, there was a moment in the book when you started doing more community engagement, bringing the arts, especially when you had the temple behind you and you had that space. What I want to ask, like, how do you, knowing that you trained as a professional artist in many ways, you were not comfortable bringing a rigor to the community, but the community gave you other things. Can you talk about that and that work of kind of handling it for yourself? Because this is something a lot of us talk about, this idea of how do we work with our community if we have to work kind of with a different kind of quality?
Well, yes, I want to start with acknowledging that I was blessed to be welcomed into the Buddhist temple, Senshin Buddhist temple, by Reverend Moss, who gave me a space to work in. I had a sacred space. I had a history in that building, on that floor, in the kitchen where people, and in the classrooms where people had left camp and were held there and went shopping in those spaces and cooked there because they were afraid to go out in the streets alone. So this place had history, and we were just adding a layer and learning from that history. So when I started teaching, people asked me to teach dance there, and I had never, I was trained in a certain really tough way. And to go into the community to teach people who were not necessarily dancers, I was a little afraid to do that. But as I got into it, I really wanted people to understand the rigor and the beauty of creating and moving and dancing together. So I did push people very hard in my dance class at first. And they called me Novocaine instead of Nobuko because that's what they needed after my classes. And I created.
You got them the Karate Kid 2 gig. What?
But I've learned to adjust, and I do work with people who have done nothing. I mean, worked with the Cambodian people who had never seen a play on the stage, and got them to laugh and dance and move, and in their own ways created a window for them to feel what it is to present themselves as themselves on a stage, a place where they could belong, in an American place that they could belong, because we don't have those spaces. So that's what my work is really trying to do with communities. So I adjust according to where I am and whom I'm with, how tough I'm going to be.
Anita, thank you for finding some of the most revolutionary, radical moments in the book. I should have known you would. You did.
Good book. This needs to be, every person needs to read this book, if not every Asian American.
I'm with you. And thank you for finding the through lines. Thank you for connecting the generations, Anita. That was really beautifully done. We'll bring it back at the end for.
And we didn't get to talk about Islam and
We didn't, did you? Oh gosh, there's still so much more to talk about. Oh well, yeah. But gosh, Nobuko, this is going really great. And the audience is like totally into it, and they're dropping all kinds of wonderful, just sort of in the moment responses into the chat. And I'll remind all of you in the audience to please, just drop in questions too, either for Nobuko or for the panelists, or don't feel like you have to wait till the end to drop them in. Nobuko, let's sort of set up our third and final friend, by showing a short video clip, the one of Fandango Obon. What do you think, like a minute of it? How much do you think we should show?
Yes, so this project, Fandango Bon, is what you'll see just a taste of how in the last 8 years we've been trying to bring together the Japanese, Latino, and African American and Muslim communities together into one circle to also to celebrate the earth and to learn how to live better on the earth. So let's show maybe a couple of minutes of this.
Okay.
Fandango Obon is a gathering of 3 distinct cultures: the West African, Mexican Son Jarocho culture, and the Obonodori, which is Japanese Buddhist traditions.
This is our 3rd year, and each year the circle is getting more and more diverse.
As long as the energy is really good, it's very simple to collaborate. And everyone has their own instruments from wherever their country is. They all have the same roots when you really think about it.
Fandango, Obon, Polycultural Remix, Jam and a Prayer, Angelino Souls, Transforming Ethnic Borders, Birthing a New World.
We're building an idea that it's a good thing for people of different cultures to come together, to convene in a way that's maybe unusual, actually, because they actually get to participate in another form that's different from theirs, but then they can also see, there's similarities about this too. We want people to feel comfortable crossing borders into other communities.
It don't matter who you are or what you do in your life. If you walk down that street and you see all these people right here doing this beautiful thing, I swear
you're gonna want to jump in.
You're gonna feel it.
Yeah.
Where you're going to find people from so many different ethnicities coming together and having such a wonderful experience.
Yeah!
We hope that we will encourage other communities of color to really deal with stuff about the environment. That's what this is about, connection to the earth.
Instill in people the idea that anybody can participate, and they should.
We're democratizing the arts. We're saying everybody should participate. And in a sense, this returns us to the circle of our origins, of our beginnings.
Gosh, Nobuko, our next friend Michelle Habel Payan is jumping up and down, eager to talk with you about Fandango Obon. She's been warming up, since last night by texting and emailing and calling me. Yeah, Michelle, let's bring you on. Oh gosh, Michelle, the three of us have had quite a lot of fun together, haven't we, over the last 10 years or so? And you, Michelle, you've made such a difference in Seattle and beyond. I mean, obviously, as a faculty member at UW, you're a scholar, you're an artivista, you're an organizer, you're so many different things. And your work in Chicana and Latina studies in the Department of Gender, Women, and Sexuality Studies at UW is certainly one place that you do your work, but it is not the only place by any means. And, there's your publications, and they're amazing and they're out there, but you've also done amazing public facing work. And the main way that I've gotten to know you is through the Women Who Rock project, which had just this absolutely vibrant life for more than a decade. And I should put it in the present tense, in the way in which you've created a kind of activist archival community, that is both in the community and in the university, and blurring the lines between is just like so important, so important. Yeah. And you've been sort of standing alongside Nobuko since the beginning of the Fandango Obon project. So I can't wait to hear what the two of you are going to talk about.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Deborah and Nobuko and Linda and everybody on the panel. And I just want to acknowledge that I do live on the lands and waters of the Lushootseed speaking people, and specifically in Seattle, the Duwamish people. I want to explain this picture behind me a little bit that gives us the context for the clip that we just saw. And this, Nobuko, this is when you came to Washington Hall in the year 2003, and you were our keynote for the Women Who Rock Unconference. And there we are on La Tarima, and we're practicing some café con pan, which is one of the zapateado steps. And then surrounding us in the circle is the Seattle Fandango Project. So different people from the Seattle Fandango Project that had been really catalyzed with a good friend of yours and mine, or I guess our friends, Martha Gonzalez, and of course, Quetzal Flores. So they had been in Seattle for a while, and we had been building community and really intentional community, intergenerational, and trying to create a space where different communities who don't often have an occasion to come together intentionally can come together, so that intersectional community and multi-generational. And Women Who Rock really, from its inception, which started in 2011, really wanted to honor women of who we called women of wisdom, who maybe in the pop music world, there's kind of a particular image and age of women that count or don't count. And we both wanted to throw that away and really honor those women who had been really uniting and linking social justice movements to their music making. And so when Quetzal suggested that we invite you, we said yes, right? And it was so perfect, and you came. And I just want to share a couple pictures here. I'm going to share my screen because you did some children's dance workshops.
Oh yeah.
And I'm going to share the archive, some images from the archive. Actually, here's an image. This is the poster from that year that you came. But here, and anyone can go to this archive and you can type in Nobuko and these images will come up, and there are beautiful images. And I just want to emphasize that there's so many images of the healing circle. So you did connected with Monica Rojas, who did Afro-Peruvian percussion, and you improvised with her. And then where's the children's? Here it is, the children's dance workshop. And I just love this picture. Again, it's the circles, right? So I know you're here, right there, right there. There's Deborah, and my daughter's in here. And this moment was so precious to me because the kids were there, and it was just an amazing intergenerational moment. And here's another of those beautiful images of the circle healing, and you have everybody raising their hands, and this is just an incredible moment of generating healing energy. And that connects to your chapter. For me, there you have a chapter called How to Mend What's Broken. And so I wanted to ask that question. That was where I was leading off. My question was, how do we mend what's broken? I think what's so beautiful about the book, and I like Anita, and like, wow, everybody must need this book. I was reading it on the plane to and from Hawaii, and I was talking about it as loud as I could to Jaime and my daughter, so that everybody could kind of get curious. And about what I was reading, and I was holding it up, saying, "This book is so great. You must." So, but I think what's so beautiful in the book is there's so many instances of where you have to confront things that have been broken violently on purpose, right? Relationships, homes, everything. And yet the recurring refrain throughout the book is, how do we mend what's broken? And then you give beautiful examples over and over again. So in terms of, and I'll make this short, wrap it up, and also lead us back to Fandango Obon. How then was that a healing circle? What were the things that you were hoping to mend through that healing circle of bringing together Fandango and Obon? And I'll just leave it there.
Well, it was really a stumble into something because, and maybe it wasn't a stumble because Quetzal doesn't do anything unintentionally. And Quetzal invited me to a Fandango class that they were teaching, he and Martha were teaching, and I walked into the class and he pushed a harana in my hand, and I was like, oh, this is sort of like a ukulele, but it's bigger. And I remembered a few chords, and I got up there, and around the tarima we stood, and I was like, after a while, feeling a little bit more comfortable and seeing everybody in that circle. And then I thought, and then Martha grabs me and takes me up there and is doing Café con Pan up there with me, and I'm realizing, oh my God, this is the drum. They're doing the drum with their feet. And people were getting up and singing, not Martha, but, other people. It was such a communal activity that it was people were equal in this circle. And I thought about looked at it, and I said, I've written a few Obon songs at that time, these circle dances that we Japanese do, Buddhists do, to remember our ancestors. And I said, but we stand on a platform to do the music, and people dance around the platform. I wonder what would happen if we brought Fandango and Obon together. That's what I said to Quetzal, and he said, yes. And so there we were, in Los Angeles, in America, where they try to divide us and keep us divided. We are in the place of divide and conquer. So to bring our music together and our traditions together that have held our communities together through thick and thin, through camp, through, all these different kinds of separations, through the ghettoizations of our communities, etc. To do this we didn't realize what kind of an act it was, but I think it was a revolutionary act to do it. And Reverend Mas, again, Reverend Godani at Zenjin Buddhist Temple, was the one who said, it shouldn't be a fusion, it should be a conversation. And so we began this conversation. And then, yes, at first it was with the Latino and Japanese community. And then we said, hey, we need to bring in the African American community. Oh, we need to look at the other forms. Look at the Muslims are doing a hadra and turning, and we saw the similarity of energy fields that this kind of work was creating. And that by doing it together, all borders fell away. It was something beyond words. It was an experience that we did together, to moving energy together, moving our bodies together, learning what it felt like to do fandango, to feel that in our bodies, to do obon, to move our bodies in the way that our ancestors did, or your ancestors did. That's how we learned who we were together, to dance on the earth that we know that was holding us. And now look, we're everywhere, fire, floods. I mean, we must pay attention to what's going on to the earth. So this is a way for us to address these things through the arts, because each workshop that we do, each gathering we do, we are able to address these things together as community, across boundaries, to see how are you dealing with this? How are you dealing with this? How are you dealing with gentrification? You know, how are you dealing with the divisions in your community? So these are the things that we were learning through Fandango Obon, and that we will continue to try to spread. In fact, I want to do one. We talked about trying to do one in Seattle. Because we have a big Fandango community there. We have a big Obon community there. The possibilities are really amazing. So yes, we have to do this.
Let's do it.
Thank you so much. And you know, my mom is on the call here, and she was born in the 40s, and she grew up in Boyle Heights. And so yes, so she remembers, you know, she remembers what happened, you know, in the camps. And so she knew it was terrible. And she thought it was so wonderful when, you know, Quetzal had performed a couple times too at the center, at the, the theater. Yeah. And he was wondering what the connection was. And I said, Mom, it's Nobuko. And she said, oh, okay, I get it now. But thank you for the healing, because our Fandango tradition too, and I'm a student of the tradition, but it is the healing of the music in the circle playing with others. And I think what you teach us in that book is that how do we mend what's broken? We come together and we mend it together, because they try to break us into individual units. But when we come together, then we have our power.
I don't know if you were in the circle a couple of years ago when Tia Nieves, I think was her name, and they were doing La Bamba, and we were all you know, used to hearing La Bamba, but she came in, she started singing, and there was a passion in her voice, and we were dancing, but we just looked, and it stopped our hearts. And then we learned later that her husband was in the hospital, and she was mourning, and we were listening, and we could hear it in her voice. So that's the kind of healing that the Fandango circle can do, Fandango Obon. You know, we want to listen to each other. We want to heal each other. We want to remember the children at the border. We want to bring those stories together so that those old stories and those new stories become one.
Dwelling in the differences, sitting in the differences, finding the connections. Oh my God, I've learned so much about that from both of you. Michelle, stay right where you are. You know, we've got in the chat, we've got Harana, Tarima, Cafe con Pan. I'm going to add Upon, Bonodori. Yeah, you know, the differences, the connections. Oh my God.
Hadra.
Hadra, thank you. Thank you. That's an important one. Yeah. You know, the evening is drawing on. We'd like to have a little bit of a chance for the panelists, all of you, to talk with one another. So let's bring Vince back on, Vince Schleitweiler, and let's bring Anita Ali back on. And let's just take 3 or 4 minutes, maybe just for all of you to, let's just say it's, you know, we're sitting in the kitchen together, right? It's later in the evening where, you know, we've been hanging out, you know, let's hang out a little bit more. Do you have questions or comments or responses, any of you, to one another?
Well, Anita, I just have to say, as I said before, that, you know, I was in Michigan this last week, and I went to a Eid celebration, and it was so healing to be in that space on the farm at the Sufi Naqshbandi farm. And even though my son wasn't there, because they're in Senegal, it was such a beautiful, that's another example of how after everyone coming out of their corners and their spaces during this year and a half of lockdown, what a healing experience it was to be in that space, to do prayer, to hear the call. And I've learned, the meaning of that, and being in those spaces when the roof raises up and we do this together. So the commonality that we find in these experiences, you do find a universality in it. As a Buddhist, and having all these different religions and practices as part of our family has been such a teacher for me. And I wanted to share that with the community. And that's why I brought it into the Hadra, into Fandango Obon, so that others could feel what it was to turn and feel like an atom spinning in space together with others.
I think the really interesting moment in the book, of many interesting moments, but the one you saved for near the end was when your son called you to tell you that he had said his shahada, which is his oath to Islam, his declaration of Muslimness. And that moment in the book where your soul is almost accepted. It's like you've been like unable to move because it's bringing you back to the Islam that you felt took your partner, his father, away from you. And then he asked you to join the zikr circle, right? And the chanting. And so you actually experience a different Islam, especially through Sufism.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to ask you, just so that we can have this moment about this shared experience with Islam and the Islam that we have experienced, you and I and Kamu, where many people have not. It isn't this fundamental, austere,
Right.
lack of musicality place.
It's so musical.
Right? I mean, the scripture itself is only spoken, and it's an oral tradition, and it's rhythmic, and it's the miracle of the time was the poetry, and that's what people forget when they speak about Islam. So I'm wondering, how did it all come together for you finally in just the acceptance? And I know you're a very accepting person, but I'm sure.
No, it was not easy because Kamal's father was killed in the process of trying to help get a mosque built in the name of Malcolm X in New York City. So he was one of 4 people who got killed in that process. So yes, it incited a lot of fear within me. And so it was something for me to overcome, and just to be in that space in the mosque in Oakland and to see, oh, look what they're doing. Oh, look at the music. Oh, look at the feeling of people, shoulder to shoulder, doing salat, with the women. It was, it grew on me, and I had to talk to this imam and question him afterwards, about things. But yeah, it took time for me to get over it. And now my grandson, Ahmed, who's 13, is in Senegal, and he's learning Quran. He's learning the Quran. He's learning, and it's beautiful to see this picture of him as a 13-year-old chanting the Quran. So yes, it's something new for that we grew into our family. And even my present husband's mother, who was a devout Christian, and my family, we all had to lean in and figure out how to deal with this new element in our family, and it really, it became very natural after a while. But it was a moment of that everybody had to take a little bit more attention and let down their guard and take it in, and not listen to the world out there, the clatter of the world that wants to make us fearful of each other.
Michelle, Vince, would you like to ask anything, respond to anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank, Anita and Vince too for their very different but necessary questions that just show the incredible breadth, Nabucco, of relationships you have, right? That go in so many directions, and it's just incredible to me. And I was so happy that you did mention the children at the border right now, people who are being detained when deported or worse, right? And and the Suru for Solidarity, which maybe people should know that there is a movement of allyship from the Japanese American community for people at the border, for Latinx people or undocumented people at the border, especially, and the children. And I know that there was going to be a big, I guess, gathering at the National Mall in DC right before COVID. And maybe you could, but then there was something online that addressed that, and maybe you could mention that a little bit.
Yes, we did adapt ourselves to, we had to not do the Washington thing, so a lot of things were done online. And at the end of this, you're going to see a video of how we used one of the theme song of Fandango Bon, Bambutsu, which means 10,000 things all connected, as a way of having people from Alaska to Japan to all over the United States to New York to contribute to this one video, to do the dance. And that was this Suru for Solidarity is a very important movement. It is really important because people are using their very own experiences as children to relate to a present moment, and to know, I can't imagine, I was in there with my parents, and that was a scar on my life. I can't imagine being taken away from my parents and what that would do. So we as a country have to be responsible and responsive to what this is doing to young people. And it's a very important moment right now.
Wow. We should probably open it up to general Q&A at this point. Let's bring Linda Ondo back on. Yeah, see, in a minute, like everybody's going to be here, right? And the thing that's already happening in this room is the very clear message that, activist effort, radical reimagining, it builds, the lessons and the moves that we learn as we go along, they build, we learn from one another. And in fact, there are a couple of questions. Linda, do you want to go to the Q&A box? There are a couple that I think would be really great to ask.
So, one that was asked earlier, and Michelle, this is for you, is Women Who Rock still going on? Haven't gone for several years, so if you could address that. And then also, any updates on Fandango Obon project? That would be for Nobuko. So take it away, Michelle and Nob.
Sure, yes. So we had an amazing, we had to pivot during COVID for our 10th anniversary, which was 2020. And we actually had hoped to invite Ofelia Esparza, who Nobuko knows is part of Fandango Bon, and she did participate, but online with her daughter. And our theme was Ofrendas for the Future. So really continuing to build on understanding that we can build on traditions that have sustained us, but we also adapt them. And so so our 2020 was online anniversary, our 10th anniversary. And then this year we did just take a little break because many of us had to teach online, and It was a lot of online. And but we're going to do a kind of a countdown that resumes that we can share online, that kind of resumes our 10 years. But we hope to come roaring back when the pandemic ends. And so if you're interested, you can email me. I'll put my email in the chat. And you can always connect with any one of us and get to me or look online. But if you're interested, we would love to have you be involved. And we would love to, it would be really wonderful to do a co happening with Women Who Rock and the Fandango Obon Women Who Rock. So we can dream for the future when the pandemic is safe enough for.
Yes, we should dream for the future.
Perfect.
Right now.
Yes, so, Nobuko, we're already being asked by Tsukina, where do we sign up for Seattle Fandango Obon? And so they're already asking, so we got to make this happen.
Yeah, we actually, Quetzal is going to be up there. They're going to be performing at the end of September to October 3rd or something like that. And we talked about maybe doing a preliminary, something smaller that we can start do something during that time. We'll see if we can get it together, but maybe I can come up and we can do a small version that will be, to promote the next version, which would be larger.
Yes, they're coming up at the end of August also to be part of the Tacoma Refugee Choir. They're going to do some workshops, and then they will come back at the end of September.
Yes.
To perform for Town Hall.
Right.
So we have two opportunities. Yeah.
Yes.
So if you're interested, I'll put my also email and.
Yes. Okay. And then we have another comment from the amazing Tomiko Nimura. Amazing panel, grounded in brilliance, hope, and radical art. Where are a few places for people, organizations that you each look to in order to find our way forward from this moment? Thank you, Tomiko. And that's open up to the panel.
Well, I think we just, mentioned one of them, which was Suited for Solidarity. There's so many, people, there's so much going on. It's small, it may not be as visible as the civil rights movement or the Black Power, but there are a lot of local things, and probably Linda, you know more about local than anybody else I can think of, from that people are gathering around, and it's really through involving ourselves in things that we keep our hope together, because even in small ways that we move forward, it is moving us forward. It is moving us and elevating consciousness.
I would also add that it's been a very difficult year for so many of us in these communities, and I think you also have to acknowledge when you need to step back and when you need to take care of your family. I know that, I've been hurt very much through some slander on social media and had to recoil for quite some time, and many other things, other campaigns that I've led here in the city of Seattle. And it takes a lot. And so sometimes you have to allow yourself that break from that activism, because it is exhausting. It is high burnout. And if you don't take care of yourself and your family and your mental health, no one is going to benefit from it, and certainly not you. So I feel like as much as you want to do all of this stuff, protect your energy and protect your time, and know that there's so much to do in the world. It's not going away anytime soon. So I would just side on that.
Vincent?
Yeah, I was going to ask actually if, this is a really incredible high-powered panel. So I've been happy to just listen to it. But we have an amazing group of people in this room, in this virtual room as well. And so, you know, I mentioned a couple of places in the chat that are local partners of Studio for Solidarity. But I imagine that the sort of the knowledge in this audience about the kind of organizations that are doing the work is really huge. So actually, I kind of invite people to respond to that question about what organizations you look for in the chat, so that we can learn from you as well. I did want to actually, if there's time for me to ask another question that related to that. I wanted to thank Anita and Nobuko for talking about Chicago, because I'm from Chicago. And growing up as a Japanese American in Chicago, I definitely was not aware of it as a site of Asian American movement history, right? Of kind of radical solidarity, right? Which was not something that I was experiencing when I was there as a child. And it's really meaningful to me to hear about that. But what I'm being reminded of in this moment, you know, which is a sort of beautiful moment for people to learn the stories in this book, is that, you know, there's so much of this history that's lost, right? And that we're in a moment now, finally, probably for the first time in my lifetime, that is kind of approaching the sort of energy of the moment when, you know, when you were getting started, Nobuko, and everything was people had so many visions about changing the world. Hi there. And so, you know, people are learning again these lessons, Nobuko, what you learned over and over again through the years about how hard it is to build multiracial solidarity, right? About how hard it is to build a community for liberation. And so in this moment when we are finding all these sort of resources that have been lost about people who have been building spaces for us all along, like you, I was wondering where, Nobuko, where you turn for your inspiration, right? As you've gone through the periods when, you know, when talking about liberation was popular at times when it was, nobody wanted to hear it. Where do you find that?
Absolutely, you know, and that's, I think it really helped me being an artist through this, because, and being at the temple, because there was a lot of divisions in the movements in the late 70s. You know, there was a lot of upheaval, and but I could keep working. I could keep creating work. I could keep telling stories on the stage and creating music and creating dances and creating theater that and doing it in a way that held the principles of the movement, of doing it with harmony with each other, to doing it to where giving people voice. So that was an advantage in being an artist in a community. And I want to emphasize being a community artist is and that is also a resource, because you're closer to the stories, you're closer to the traditions, you're closer to the culture. So those are the things you turn to when, you know, things go haywire. You know, you need obon when you're feeling down. You need these kind of things to feel, and eat and things like this to feel human and whole again. The other thing is that I learned from Grace Lee Boggs is that they retreat. They retreated every summer from, I don't know, a month or 2 months, I think. And they're in Maine, the same. The Grace Boggs family, you know, of activists, they're now in Maine again, still meeting, resting, eating good food, playing music, and meeting, you know, and talking about what we did this year, what are we going to do next year, etc. I never had that, and it was Grace really who said, write the book and it'll change your life. And that was the first time I really sat down and looked at my life in that way, you know, and it was in a sense, a reflection, a moment that I had to pull back from the world, even if it was 3 hours or 2 hours, or sometime, you know, weeks or a month would go by that I wouldn't work on it, and then come back together and have that moment of meditation and looking again at finding meaning in what I was participating in, and also finding the relationships. And that's why Deborah says there's a whole lot of names in this book, you know, because There are, because Reverend Moss has said in Buddhism that, you know, this is a series of relationships. That's all we are. All we are is a series of relationships. That's what makes up Nobuko. That's what makes up Anita. That's what makes up Vince, etc. Is these series of relationships. And here we are, here together, you all, with the incredible work that you do, with the young people that you are in touch with, spreading this, multiplying this, making more awareness, you know. So nothing is lost. We are moving forward. We are creating and raising consciousness each day, each moment.
And Nobuko, this is the message your book offers over and over and over again through example, you know, through exhortation. And I wonder if you could take us out of this beautiful event by reading one of the closing passages of the book. And as you find your page, I want to thank our panelists for like just bringing so much heart and spirit and hope to this discussion. I'd like to thank Linda Ando for just like, boom, making it all possible. The amazing tech crew that has been just like on it behind the scenes through this whole thing. And after Nobuko has read, we'll bring Stacia back on, right? To really close us out. How's that sound?
Okay, so this is going to actually set up the video that you're going to see after Stacia is finished, right?
Yeah.
Okay, had to turn the light on, it's getting dark in here. In an age in which most of us spend too much time observing the world through our rectangular devices, to step into the circle of Fandango Bon is a potent communal act. In this circle, we reclaim our power, our creativity. We make music with our own hands, our own voices. We circle the earth with our feet and remember we belong to it. In this circle, everyone is equal. Everyone is seen. Everyone has a place. In this circle, there are no borders. No us, no them. There is plenty of room for more circles. In this circle, we weave our many roots, knowing our diversity is our strength. In this circle, we are enacting the world we want to live in. In this circle, in this circle. Thank you for being in this circle with me today. You're an inspiration to me, you all. Thank you so much.
That was so beautiful, Nobuko. That just a beautiful way to close us out tonight. I'm just coming here to thank all of you for this wonderful panel and to remind folks that Nobuko's book is available at our friends Elliott Bay Book Company. They have signed book plates, so if you want a book signed by Nobuko, you can make that happen. The store is open for limited browsing, curbside pickup and delivery, and you can find her book at their website, elliottbaybook.com, and we'll put a link in the chat, of course, as well. We also have a link in the chat to the survey, and we'd love it if you could take a minute after the program to copy and paste that into your browser and let us know what you think. And finally, we're grateful to everybody who made tonight's program possible. Thank you to our program partners at Densho, Elliott Bay Book Company, Seattle JACL, and of course at Great Leap. And thanks to our sponsors, the Gary and Connie Kunis Foundation, the Seattle Times, and the Seattle Public Library Foundation. And of course, thanks to all of you for joining us tonight. And we have one last treat to close us out tonight. So I think Nobuko set us up, and so Michael, you can take it away.
Welcome everybody, my name is Nobuko Miyamoto. We're going to learn today a dance called Bambutsu no Tsunagari, which means 10,000 things all connected. Now Fandango comes from Veracruz, Mexico, and Obon, of course, is from the Japanese tradition, which we dance in a circle to remember our ancestors. I'm going to teach you this simple dance, only 4 steps, very easy, okay? So this is the fun part. You are going to put yourself before your camera and you're going to shoot yourself doing the dance.
Yigoe Kwan on Yatkusani. Yigoe Kwan.
Circle, dance. ワニ踊る. For this, you plan, you lose. For this, you plan, you lose. Don't plan, just dance. Practice, forget. For this, you plan, you lose. Hey.
In the circle we dance, no beginning, no ending. In the circle we dance, I am you, you are the other me. Bambutsu no tsunagari, bambutsu. Bambutsu no tsunagari, no tsunagari. Bambutsu no tsunagari, bambutsu. Bambutsu no tsunagari, no tsunagari.
Carácter ceremonial, el fandango rompe el orden, celebración especial, en donde las almas borden con sus ritmos, melodías, que el día de hoy celebramos, ancestral sabiduría, con la cual nos abrazamos.
Bam, bam, butsu. No tsunagari, bam, 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 butsu. No tsunagari, bam, 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 butsu. 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No tsunagari. In the circle we dance, like the moon and the sun. In the circle we dance, let our hearts be the drum. Bambutsu no tsunagari, bambutsu. Bambutsu no tsunagari, no tsunagari. Bambutsu no tsunagari, bambutsu. Bambutsu no tsunagari, no tsunagari. Hey, la lo li, la lo le lo le lo le lo la. Empecemos a remediar con los ancestros del don. Empecemos a remediar con los ancestros del don. Es tiempo de celebrar la vida en fandango. Es tiempo de celebrar la vida en fandango. Bam, bam, butsu. No tsunagari, bam, 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 butsu. No tsunagari, bam, 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 butsu. No tsunagari, bam, 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 butsu. No tsunagari. In the circle we dance to remember the dead. In the circle we dance, oneness is moving. Bambutsu no tsunagari, bambutsu. Bambutsu no tsunagari, no tsunagari.
Gotta go. Come back. Come back. Sente. What, you want more?